Hello, Steve White, Steve Arts 89. Well, Skeleton Crew, the ratings are in, it's not good. Everyone's talking about it. They're blaming the Acolyte. They're calling it the Last Jedi effect because Solo kind of bombed because the Last Jedi alienated a core group of fans who basically boycotted Solo. And even though it was a decent film, it didn't do well. Kind of like how the first Star Trek film sold people on boldly going for the second film, and then they didn't boldly go anywhere. They just stayed on Earth and did a boring terrorist plot. So then when they said at the end of that film they were going to boldly go, no one believed them. They didn't come back for Beyond. And Beyond, even though it was probably the better film out of the three, and felt more like a Star Trek film, despite its flaws, people didn't come back for it. It failed. And it looks like the same thing is happening here, where even the most positive, reviewers and fans like Grace Randolph, who's often accused of being a shill, even she had to give up on the show halfway and say, I can't defend the show anymore. Because it started off interesting and people projected all the good places it could go, and then it went where it wanted to, which was nowhere. And it was really bad, the ratings were really bad, and now less people have come forward for this. And I think there's two factors here. One is the Acolyte turned people off, and also this show was really marketed like it was a kid's show. And that's really insulting. I know George envisioned Star Wars sort of for kids in the beginning, and he sort of went back to that with the prequels to a certain level, and that helped with the merch because it brought a new generation of kids who bought toys of Star Wars, but it alienated the parents and the adults because the first film worked for adults, and like other franchises, even if they were sort of seen as kids shows or kids product lines or toy lines, they were made for the whole family to watch. They were adult enough that you could enjoy them, and that's why when the kids grew up and became adults, they could watch Star Trek and Star Wars and stuff like that, because it wasn't just made for kids. They may have fallen in love with it as a kid, but they would watch it later, like particularly Transformers, Master Universe. I find them totally watchable as an adult. Whereas superpowers and stuff like that, it's like, wow, this is made for kids. I can't watch this. I tried. But yeah, so I think that's just what's happening. But I think people are being a bit harsh on Disney because I think at the end of the day, George sold them dead franchise. I know he had a storyline plotted out for the next trilogy, and it was going to be all about like the children of Skywalker and Metachlorians and all that, and they didn't follow that, and that's why the sequel trilogy kind of failed. But even if they had kept to his story outline, that would have been the end. Where would they have gone after that? I know back in the day, like I predicted this 20 years ago, but you can't do Star Wars on TV. It just doesn't work. It's an event film, it's one story. They stretched it out with prequels showing how they got there, and they were going to stretch it out more showing how, it continued on for the generation after that. But that's it. And with the TV show, I remember being a Star Trek fan being very threatened by this story of George Lucas basically selling a 5-year show that was basically pre-sold and everything, which is what he was asking for at the time, and it didn't happen. Because I thought Star Trek films don't make as much as Star Wars. It really works on TV, and if they can get Star Wars to work on TV, it's going to overshadow Star Trek. But then I realised they can't do that. What are they going to do? Just rehash Darth Vader and have him come in every week and fight Luke Skywalker? You can't do that. What are they going to do? Just focus on random characters and show their life story? There'd be some interest in that from fans, but not the general public, and not all the fans, just some. So Star Wars was just never going to work on TV, and they did the films, so they really had nowhere to go, and they have nowhere to go with it. It's basically a dead franchise. George sold them a dead franchise. He had one last gasp in it, and they kind of threw that gasp away and ended up with what they ended up with. But even if that had done well and been, like I said, they would have been, where would they have gone after that? So I think, sadly, Star Wars is kind of done. And it makes me sad because I only just got into Star Wars. I watched it as a kid, I liked the movies, but there was never enough. Like 3 films was not enough to really marathon and really immerse yourself in it. But now there's 9 films, and the last May the 4th I did a marathon. I watched all the films. I really started to feel the universe and really feel immersed in it, and ended up buying a whole bunch of merch which I haven't bought for 20 years. And I'm kind of sad that it's kind of gone, but there really was nowhere for it to go. And that's what I'm sort of realising, that even if The Acolyte had been decent and the other shows didn't have some of the issues that they had, they still couldn't have done as well as Star Wars. They still wouldn't have... The franchise is just not going to have a long life again. Now, the only other option is to remake the Skywalker trilogy story from scratch and maybe stretch it out a bit, pad it out a bit. Even if that works, if they get that lightning in that bottle again, that still comes to an end at some point. So, and I don't think a reboot will work anyway. I don't think you can. It's like Star Wars was of its time. It was the first. And it's kind of like Madonna and new pop stars. It doesn't matter how great they are, how much they sell. You know, Madonna is the queen because she's the first. Michael Jackson is the king of pop. He's always going to be because he was the first. You can't replace them with new people, even if they do better. It just doesn't work that way. And I don't think Star Wars really, a new reboot would do better. And even if it did, it can't take the place of the original because it was the first. It broke that ground. So yeah. I don't have any hope for Star Wars as a franchise, but we'll see.